is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. He called the last 20 years of nation-building wars dumb, and he's right. This is the opposite.
He said that the president could continue this for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever he wants to do, guys.
And Courtney, we know the Pentagon also says 3 fighter jets were mistakenly shot down over Kuwait. What happened there?
Yeah, and it looks as if this was a friendly fire. So the Kuwaiti military saw these aircraft, thought that they were some sort of a threat, and shot them down. 3 at separate times. I mean, guys, this is a pretty unusual occurrence here. One thing that we learned out of U.S. Central Command is not only, of course, the most important thing, all 6 individuals who were on board those aircraft were safely recovered and are in stable condition, but we learned that, in fact, there are Iranian aircraft that are also threatening those skies. That may be a little window into exactly how this happened. Those aircraft may have been misidentified as potentially dangerous Iranian aircraft that could have posed a threat, but it really opens the question for if there is this coordination between the U.S. and Kuwait and all of these allies as these airstrikes are continuing in Iran, how in the world could it have happened that not only 1, but 3 aircraft were mistakenly shot down by the Kuwaiti military? It's all under investigation now.
All right, Courtney Hubie on all of that for us. Courtney, thank you.
Now let's bring in NBC News international correspondent Danielle Hamamdjian in Beirut. Danielle, really the entire region has felt the impact of these attacks. Talk to us about the concerns about a larger regional conflict, especially in Lebanon, where you are.
Yeah, and what happened here overnight has been described as the beginning of a new front opening in this war. This was the biggest assault by the Israeli military on the Lebanese capital of Beirut, where I am, since late 2024, when Hezbollah and Lebanon reached a ceasefire. You know, this is a country that is painfully familiar with war, and as one person put it to me over the weekend, there was sort of a collective sigh of relief that they hadn't been dragged into this war. Well, of course, everything changed overnight. It started with Hezbollah launching rockets and drones into northern Israel. They said it was to avenge the assassination of Khamenei. Well, shortly after, the Israeli military retaliated, not only in southern Lebanon, but here in Beirut. Behind me, over the bay, is a suburb of Beirut called Dahya. It is a Hezbollah stronghold. It is densely populated. It also has thousands of civilians who live there. And so there were about a dozen strikes in 3 different waves. And what we saw were thousands and thousands of residents trying to leave during the night and during the day. We went to central Beirut, where we got to speak with many of them, and some really interesting things that were said off camera, ladies. Not on camera, because speaking publicly against Hezbollah is still a risk they are not willing to take. But what they told us was they're fed up with war. They're fed up with the displacement, the constant bombardment, and they do not support the Hezbollah strikes last night, even though ideologically they still support the group.
And Danielle, more broadly, what sort of retaliation against American forces have we seen from the region so far?
Well, I mean, this is still, hours old. This war is just, 48 hours now. And of course, you've got consulates and embassies on high alert. U.S. citizens have been told to evacuate. You've got different proxies in the region. Of course, Hezbollah, of course, here, funded and backed by Iran. Hamas in Gaza, though largely decimated. But you've got other groups such as the Houthis in Yemen. You've got Shia militias in Iraq as well. But the bigger concerns, as we saw over the weekend, are protesters outside American consulates and embassies in Karachi, in Pakistan, for example. At least 20 people were killed when rioters tried to storm the outer wall of the consulate. Same story in Baghdad. Tear gas was used on protesters there. So again, officials on high alert throughout the entire region.
Absolutely, and we know 4 U.S. troops have died as well. Danielle Hamamdjian, thanks so much. Let's now bring in Jeremy Bash. He's a former CIA chief of staff. Jeremy, let's pick up where we just left off, because we heard Defense Secretary Hegseth say that Iran started this war. Can you talk about what exactly this war will accomplish in terms of American security, given the upheaval that we're now seeing around the region? What do we have to gain here?
Yeah, well, the objectives of the United States Department of War and the Commander-in-Chief is to degrade Iran's nuclear capability, which if they break out and try to develop a nuclear weapon could threaten not only the regional players, not only Israel, but ultimately Europe and the United States. In order to do that, obviously mission one is to take out Iran's ballistic missile and one-way attack drone capabilities so that U.S. troops, U.S. bases, our diplomatic facilities, our embassies, our consulates, and our allies and partners in civilian infrastructure are not threatened by Iran's capabilities. Iran also has a lot of force structure with respect to their navy. And if they wanted to lay mines in the Straits of Hormuz, that could be a critical choke point. 20% of the world's oil goes through the Straits of Hormuz. And so if Iran's navy were to be able to set out and lay those mines, that would effectively close those straits, those waterways to any commercial shipping. And so that's why you heard President Trump talking today about taking out Iran's navy. And then finally, I think the issue is will Iran ever make a deal with the West and say we don't want to have a nuclear weapon? And this is where, again, Israel and the United States working together has decided, we need regime change, but it's very uncertain. As we've been discussing, there is no specific plan on the table. It's going to be very hard to achieve regime change without some presence on the ground.
Jeremy, you worked at the CIA. Can you talk about the intense intelligence gathering and planning that had to have happened to target all of those top leaders in Iran?
Well, Kate, you really need pristine intelligence to figure out what an individual's pattern of life is, to watch them and to validate that they are, in fact, where you think they're going to be. And so this required, undoubtedly, technical collection on their whereabouts, penetration of their communications networks, and probably some human intelligence on the ground with sources who are providing real-time information about the whereabouts of the Supreme Leader. In recent weeks and months, the Supreme Leader has taken increased security precautions because I think he had a sense that this could unfold in this way. But U.S. and Israeli intelligence were able to track their location and figure out where this meeting was going to be happening. Normally, when the U.S. and Israel launch operations, they do so in nighttime. They did it in the daytime to go after this specific meeting.
And Jeremy, there are two major branches of the Muslim faith. Maybe Americans may not understand all that, but they dominate the political landscape in that region. Can you explain a little of that and why that might make this expand into an even wider conflict?
Well, Kate, I think it's an important point because, the Iranians are Persians and the Arab countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC countries, and Jordan and Egypt and others are Arab countries, and there has been historically a lot of tension between the Arabs and the Persians, and there is some breakdown between the Sunni and the Shia sects of Islam. Obviously, the Iranians are part of the Shia sect, and they are aligned with Hezbollah, as referenced in your earlier set of piece. I would just say, though, that it's really less about the internecine Islamic tensions, really less about the internecine Middle East tensions, and really about the fact that a theocratic regime in Iran has had power for now almost 50 years. They've been determined to maintain a nuclear capability, and that's what the West has been so concerned about.
All right, Jeremy Bash, we appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
Thanks.
Still ahead, we will get reaction from one of the largest Iranian communities here in the U.S. More NBC News.